Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Courtney Octor. I am the Business Development Manager at intiGrow. We would like to welcome you to our webinar, Securing Your Enterprise Identity-Driven Secrets. And I would like to introduce our speakers today. Leading this discussion, we have a panel of excellent subject matter experts. We have Bob Kalka, the global lead at IBM Security. We have Jim Skidmore, the vice president of the solutions group at intiGrow. And we have Adam Cardell, senior partner solutions engineer at HashiCorp. We're going to kick things off with Bob. And Bob, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Okay, very good. You can hear me, I assume?
Yes.
All right, that's helpful. Hey, everybody. So great to see you all on here. I was with a client earlier this week in Austin, and it occurred to me that when we use the discussion of identity management 2 years ago, you didn't have to clarify between human and non-human, because everybody assumed when you said identity management, you meant human. And in most shops that I walk into, when you meet with the identity access management leader, it's the human identity and access management leader. But what's happening is clearly with the explosion of DevOps and modernized application environments, and frankly, improvement in how we see attack surfaces and stuff, all of a sudden, the whole topic, and we're going to focus a lot here today around the non-human identities, has become a huge topic. Before we drill down on that difference between the two and why getting observability across both is so crucial, and all the reasons underneath that, is that it's clear that when we say identities are under attack, what we mean by that is a very, very simple realization. And that is that if you look at any of the studies coming out on threats and where breaches are taking place, anywhere from 60 to 80%, depending on who you ask, of the attacks are based on leveraging an identity. The number one, in fact, problem area is, leveraging compromised valid credentials. And you can understand why that would be so tough, because if someone hacks a valid credential and gets in, unless you've got really good observability of what that account is doing, it'll take you a while to actually catch it. So as you see here, as one of our partners loves to say, hackers don't break and they log it, right? Because you got all these credentials. So we've seen a 71% year-to-year increase in attacks that use those credentials. Our X-Force, IBM X-Force team, put out our annual threat intelligence index a couple of months ago and said that 30% of all attacks they saw were leveraging compromised valid credentials. So just that continues to grow. As I said, 60, some say it's 80% of attacks are coming from identities. And if you build it out one more time, Courtney, we get into the realization that 84% of organizations have faced identity-related breaches, and the number's going on. So this is just focused on the human side of it too. So human identities and the problems that we see, and we'll explain exactly why that's happening in a few minutes. But that's what you run into, is that the human identity side of things is a mess. But when you get to the non-human side of the identities, it actually gets worse somehow. And we're just not seeing the effects of it yet. So let's go to the next slide. So what I want to do for you is lay out for you why is this happening? Why are human identities such a problem? And then why is the non-human side, where kind of a primary topic of today of secrets management, which is just another phrase for non-human identity management, is becoming such a big deal. So I've been doing this for 31 years at IBM. I've been building and leading our identity business, and actually more than that, our security business, for 31 years. And during that time, I've been around the globe constantly meeting with folks like you, talking about these topics. In fact, I literally just got back from Sydney and Melbourne, Australia, talking to dozens of clients about this stuff. And what's wild is that when I go into a client, like I did several times last week in Australia, and say, hey, let's talk about human identity management. And if you think about the two types of human identities, right, internal, external, workforce, consumer, whatever you want to call it, and I'll ask the client, what is your strategy for addressing workforce and consumer IAM? And in 90% of the cases, the answer that I get is the name of an IDP of a tool. We've standardized on Octaping, Entra, ForgeRock, IBM Verify, whatever it happens to be. And I'll just observe, right, non-judgmentally, well, I asked what your strategy is, and you gave me the name of a tool. And then they'll say, well, yeah, but we just did this 13-month bake-off and think this cloud-based technology is the best one for us. The problem that everybody's running into, if you build it out a little bit, Courtney, is you've got at least one and do one more. That's it. Good, thanks, Courtney. You have at least one IDP for workforce. And to be honest with you, in most of the shops that I go into, you'll see a homegrown IAM IDP that was written 20 to 25 years ago. And then you'll see an on-prem one that was put in 10 to 15 years ago that was supposed to get rid of the homegrown one. And yet, miraculously, that homegrown one is still around 20, 25 years later and still used by a core set of applications that nobody wants to mess with. And then on top of that, you have all these legacy applications that you still have these apps with a side file that has their user IDs and passwords, right, in a side file attached, sometimes encrypted, sometimes not, in the legacy app. But the people that wrote those legacy apps usually aren't around anymore. Nobody wants to touch them, and everybody treats it at some cost. And then we still have, of course, one or more clouds that we're managing identities in. So if you wonder why 60 to 80% of the attacks are coming from identities and why it's a mess, here's the physics, right? This picture is the physics of why it's a mess, because we have disconnected teams and tools trying to do this stuff. And so there's lots of room for holes and inconsistencies and stuff to come in. But the wild part about all that is that even though this is just the human side, this doesn't even take into account the much larger set of identities. Go ahead and build it, Courtney, on the non-human side. And with the non-human side, you've got machine identities, you've got secure API management, you've got PKI cert management, right? Issuance, rotation, and all that stuff. And then, of course, AI agents. All those are examples of non-human identities. And how do we connect those things together? Well, if I can say it playfully with you, the original sin on the human side of things is that we have disconnected teams and tools trying to implement a consistent policy. The original sin in the upper right here in the non-human identities is what most organizations are doing in their DevOps teams, because that's where it's managed, is hard coding secrets into their apps. And of course, that's not secure at all. It is trivial to reverse engineer an app, get the secret, and then start spoofing stuff. And it's said, I mean, between who you ask, there's between 10 to 60 non-human identities for every identity that's out there. But there's a whole bigger plane of problem behind this. So not only do both human and non-human have their original sin of disconnect teams and tools versus hard-coded secrets, but there's also an organizational issue here. Because typically the human identities are managed by an identity access management leader that often used to report to the CISO. For about 5 years is drifting towards IT operations as more of an automation thing, but it started drifting back to the CISOs that we're seeing on the human side of things, whereas the non-human stuff, the hard coding, all that's happening in DevOps. And so there's this disconnect that I see in almost every client we walk into between the DevOps team and an IT and the CISO. And in fact, I can say this is playful, but this is factual, is I'll ask the client, especially CISOs, and I'll say, you know, what's your process for getting a handle on both human and non-human identities? And they'll say, and they'll look at me funny and close the door of the office and say, well, we have a monthly meeting between IT, my office, and the DevOps team. And I said, well, what comes out of those meetings? and they smile slyly and say, well, we meet again a month later. In other words, there's not a lot happening. We're just trying to communicate. And of course, DevOps is just trying to get their stuff out the door because they're leading the growth of the business. Get out of our way. If we want hard code secrets, don't bother me. And then on the other side of things, of course, we're like, well, we got to keep the policy consistent and figure out this stuff. So we get this disconnect between DevOps and the rest of the organization, and just meeting doesn't solve anything. How do you actually do anything? And the problem we would assert to you is that there's no shared observability of what's happening between the two sides. And we're going to show you today how we fix that. So this mess between human and non-human, between DevOps and IT and the CISO office, it's like easy to say, okay, it's kind of complex, but what do we do about it? But so what we've done when we completed our acquisition of HashiCorp earlier this year is we documented a couple of dozen different use cases of things people want to be able to do, outcomes that they want to have, things they want to be able to do, but they can't because of this physics mess that you're seeing. So what we're going to share with you here on this webinar is what are the top 6. And it's 6, not because 6 is the right number, it's because these 6 are coming up in every single conversation we're having. So let's go through this. The first one you see is at the bottom of the screen, identity observability. Now, what does that mean? Here's what identity observability means. Identity observability is on the non-human side. We got the non-human side and the human side. On the non-human side, the first piece is, can you find all the hard-coded secrets? Can you do automated discovery and find where those secrets have been hard-coded and where they're being shared, like in GitHub and stuff like that? Okay, that's the first type of identity observability for non-human, is find the hard-coded secrets. The next level of non-human identity observability is, can you find all the different secrets and key managers that you have out there? So the typical shop we're walking into today, in the DevOps team, we'll find 12 to 15 instances of Vault, HashiCorp Vault Community Edition, rolled out, being managed by individual teams. There's no coordination between them. Literally over a dozen instances of a secrets manager, all being managed by different teams. And you typically find 2 to 3 other certain key managers out there as well from other vendors. HashiCorp Vault is by far the largest one out there, but you'll see this mishmash of stuff that's not being coordinated at all. So think about that. That's like the good case right now. The bad case is everything's being hard-coded as secrets in the apps. If you're getting good and actually using a secrets manager, you have dozens of them out there, right? Not much better, but that's what it is. So observability is, can you find the hard-coded secrets? And then can you find all the secrets and key insert managers so you have a chance of identifying them and actually managing them together? Okay, that's on the non-human side what observability is. On the human side, it's what we call shadow identities. So in every organization, we're finding them, is that there are shadow identity related assets. And the number one culprit right now are shadow directories. You'll have a directory with some identities in it. It was set up for a project 3 years ago that ended 2 years ago, supposed to go away. And you have all these shadow directories all over the place that people are authenticating to. And IT doesn't even know about them. There's no consistency in the policy definition across them and stuff because they're just something that's out there. So there's shadow directories, there's shadow assets, and shadow access to outside resources. So whereas once again, observability is finding the hard-coded secrets, and then all the secrets managers for non-human, on humans finding all the shadow assets. But then there's a level above that that's even more powerful. And that is, can you get literally observability of how the human and the non-human identities are interacting? Because that's where you get the really intense stuff. Okay, so an example for you. We're running into this all over the place. You go in and you find out that you've got a machine identity on a server that hasn't been used for a while, and all of a sudden there's 27 human identities start authenticating and using that server constantly. And wouldn't it be interesting if you could find out that out of those 27 human users that are out interacting with this non-human machine ID service account, that 17 of them, those human identities, had been dormant for the last 18 months. That looks really suspicious, right? but nobody's been able to see that until now. But as we're going to show you on this session, that between IBM Verify and HashiCorp, we can do that now. So observability, this one, I've spent so much time on it because it's so intense and really the key to this, which is finding the hard-coded secrets, finding all the secrets managers aren't coordinated, find all the shadow assets, and then how the human and non-human identities are interacting. That's rock star stuff based on AI, of course. We're going to go through that. That's the first of the 6 cases. The second case is frictionless access, as you see here. And that's the user experience, right? So going to passwordless and frictionless authentication, stuff like that. So at IBM, we are client 0 for that. We are managing through our IBM Verify engine today 30.5 million identities, 500,000 internal, 30 million external. We rolled out FIDO2 passkeys to all the internal users about a year ago, and it is going so well that our CIO has announced that we are going to, over the next few months, eliminate passwords as even an option to authenticate. Okay, that's how successful this has been. There's a couple of apps that have to get integrated into the passwordless stuff, and then we're moving off of passwords altogether. So it's a better user experience. It's a more secure approach to it. And so that one, doing that across any identity provider, not just ours, is a huge thing. And we're going to share that with you. Because you notice the term identity fabric is at the top of this page. The term, right, has gotten convoluted, and every vendor says the identity fabric is whatever my tools happen to do, right? It's what vendors do. We all have that kind of Achilles heel. But I'll tell you what's different about our identity fabric from everyone else is that, well, first of all, we own HashiCorp, right, which is huge. But secondly, is that the way we've implemented the identity fabric is it doesn't require our Verify IDP. If you have Octaping, Entra, ForgeRock, the stuff I'm going to show you works with them too. IBM's good at hybrid and AI, and that's what we've done here. So we'll share more of that as we get into this. All right. Third one, instead of hard coding secrets, go to a centralized secrets engine. Clearly, the ringleader, the gorilla of the market's not even close, is HashiCorp Vault, which we, of course, acquired earlier this year, and we're going to add them shortly, going into some details of that. But going to a centralized auditable secrets management engine is huge. Now, so, and HashiCorp Vault leads the way. The wild part about this, as the Hashi team will tell you, is that clearly going from hard coding secrets to an auditable secrets engine is much better. But so many people, when they put in something like Vault, will just use static secrets. So it's great that it's auditable, that you're issuing the secret, but if you use that secret forever, you're still introducing risk. So, Courtney, if you go ahead and click, where people want to get to but are struggling to right now is to dynamic secrets, right? Where you have short-lived secrets, whether short-lived means months, weeks, minutes, whatever, right? It's depending on the case. But going to dynamic-based secrets where it's auditable and you have automatic rotation and stuff is huge. And I'm sure Adam will mention more about that. That's the fourth case. The fifth case, Courtney can build it out, is the one that we're probably all going to groan when you see it, right? The PAM, Privileged Access Management. I still remember when Sarbanes-Oxley came out in like 2003, the regs, and the first bulletin from the government said, "Thou shalt do PAM." In every shop we walk into, everybody has a PAM tool, whether it's CyberArk, Delinea, Beyond Trust. Typically, those are the three you see the most. But nobody's rolled it out. There's a handful that have, but nobody outside of like a lucky few have actually rolled their PAM solution out to cover all 100% of their privileged accounts, in part because a lot of people don't actually know where all the privileged accounts are. And then when they do find them, oftentimes you get these organizational dynamics that a team will say, you want us to put in this PAM thing, but we're a little busy over here and we've got compensating controls. Don't bother us, and we have more power than you, so go away. But that team over there needs help on that, we know. And so what you end up with is between 20 and 80% of the identities are actually, of the privileged identities, are covered by the PAM solution. And especially in the United States, the cyber insurance providers have figured this out. And now I've seen it. They ask, hey, prove to me, before I renew your cyber insurance policy, or I issue it in the first place, you need to show me that you know where all your privileged users are, and that every one of them is covered. And people are kind of panicking a little bit on that. So doing PAM in a way that's actually deployable is huge. And then the final one, this identity threat management use case, is just the closure from identity observability. If observability is finding the hard-coded secrets, the secrets management, the shadow identities, and how they're human and non-human are interacting, identity threat management, a lot of people call it ITDR, identity threat detection and response, is finding the actual threats in action. And so, for example, the most common one we're seeing, it sounds weird at first, but it's policy bypasses. There's tons of cases where you'll have an authenticated user trying to get access to an app that, based on their role, your policies, they have to go through MFA. And I've had teams so many times say, there's no way you can get around our MFA engine in that case. And if you look at the traffic going on, you find that you see the user authenticating and an activity against the app and no activity against the MFA engine. You find bypasses. They're all over the place. MFA bypass, VPN bypass, ZTNA bypass, and even PAM bypass. So that one is kind of the active threat side of this thing. So all 6 of these are things that people want to be able to do, but they're unable to because of this mess. So what we in HashiCorp, what IBM and HashiCorp do together, on the IBM side, it's our Verify Identity Access Management portfolio. On HashiCorp, it is Vault and Boundary from that portfolio. But if you build this out, Courtney, what we're doing is inspect, protect, and govern. First is inspect. We're going to find all those hard-coded secrets and where they're being shared. We're going to find all your secrets, key, and cert managers so you can actually see what's out there and start managing them together. And then beyond that, we go to what people call Identity Security Posture Manager, ISPM. That's the identity observability. That's finding the shadow identities and how are the human and non-human users interacting. We do all that today. Then protection, secrets management is HashiCorp Vault. For PAM, we OEM Delinea, right? CyberArk is the gorilla of this market, but they're pretty complex. And so Delinea is the, let's say, the friendly version of PAM on the market. And that's why we've been working with them for 10 years, even when it was psychotic. For ITDR, that's an incredible solution from us called Verified Identity Protection. We're going to share you in a minute. Behavioral analytics we'll share with you, and then governance is making sure you do it consistently. So let's go to the next slide. And before I introduce Adam to go through some HashiCorp part of this, I'm just going to summarize. You can just build this whole thing out, Courtney. Is that what we've talked about so far is doing secrets management with HashiCorp, doing frictionless access, secure access, PAM, as well as governance. That all comes through our Verify portfolio. And once again, you'll see a couple of products here listed in gray font instead of black. What that is, as I told you, we've built an identity fabric that works. If you have Octaping, enter cell point, right? ForgeRock, cool. If you want to do the things we're talking about, like provide passwordless to legacy apps, including WebSphere apps, if you want to do behavioral analytics to detect compromised account usage in the first few seconds instead of weeks or months to figure it out, we have that capability in a way that bundled with different products that work, that literally just click into any of the other IDPs out there and provide that functionality. So very, very powerful. But then here at the top, if you build it out, Courtney, what's totally different about what we in HashiCorp are doing is we have this AI observability layer that can see everything going on with the non-human identities, everything going on with the human identities, and how they're interacting. The shadow identities, the secrets managers, and how those are interacting, like the dormant account example I gave you. That's all done through an AI engine called Verify Identity Protection, or VIP, tongue-in-cheek, whatever, right? And that is how we do that. So first, let's dive on HashiCorp a little bit more, because they are the king of the secrets management world. And it gives me it's a great honor to introduce you to Adam Cardell from HashiCorp.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be here today. We're going to go to the next slide. So HashiCorp Vault, as we heard Bob say, it's kind of de facto standard for secrets management. So we'll just do a brief summary as to what it is. So HashiCorp was kind of founded on this premise of managing and automating cloud resources at scale and doing it so easily. And to do that, we took an agnostic approach, right? We've kind of become the central tool to manage your hybrid cloud estate. So whether it's up in AWS, your VMware, infrastructure, any cloud of choice, we become a single tool to interact with for all those integrations. Really, Vault was developed with this need to manage machine identities, right? What we realized early on was we had Terraform or provisioning cloud resources, but you need to authenticate with all these different clouds, right? And a lot of times it's multiple accounts depending on what you're provisioning. And it's a machine identity, right? It's a service-to-service type communication. So Vault was really born out of this need to manage this problem. So we're not talking about maybe a single human. We're talking about hundreds or thousands of programmatic machine processes running at the same time, and that's kind of how modern applications work today. As you see, we have trillions of managed secrets in our Vault products, paid Vault products that we know of. 250 plus billion annual downloads, and 70% of the top banks use our products. I can go to the next slide. So this is really the most simplistic form how Vault works. As you get into the product, it is more complicated than this, but at the base level, what we have is a client requesting access. That could be a human, it could be a machine, but it's really that someone who needs access. What Vault's going to do is validate this against a third party, such as Verify or Okta or multiples. Right? You can validate your identity in multiple ways. And once we validate your identity, what we're going to do is we'll say that's who you are, and these are the secrets you have access to, right? And how do we do this? We have policies in place. We have what we call namespaces, which kind of help segment. So we can write policies that say these are the collections of secrets or group you belong to, and these are the types of secrets you have access to. And on top of that, we can put policy in place to kind of say this is when you can have access to these things, or these are the clouds that you can have access to, etc. So everything's centrally managed by us here in the Vault. We put policy around it as to when the secrets will be accessed, or how they can be accessed. And we also do full logging, right? And our logs aren't just kept internally. A lot of times these are outputted to third-party systems for compliance. We can go ahead to the next slide. One of the things Bob was talking about, really the power of Vault is getting beyond the most simplistic use cases, the static secrets. It's really dynamic secrets, right? And that's fast-moving world. What's a dynamic secret? A secret's a short-lived credential. When we say short-lived, generally we're thinking like seconds, right? In a microservice world, you have this process that needs to come up. It needs access to a secret in order to authenticate and run this process against a third-party system. We issue you a token, right? You prove your identity, you have a token. You go run that process, and that token is instantly revoked. This becomes powerful in the Microsoft service world because that lowers your attack surface. And things are TTL. Once you prove your identity, you can always renew, right? So if you have multiple processes in your application chain, they can be renewed. But you have this built-in revocation mechanism versus a static secret which lives forever, right? Next slide. So really, what are the advantages of dynamic secrets? It reduces your time to manage these secrets. You don't have to go in there now and continually manage this static secret to go renew it, or right, it's a 90-day expiry. What do? I got to go manually do it. Right, the tool's going to do it for you. We can set a secrets rotation. It can be 30 days, 60 days, whatever your compliance policy is. Vault's going to be able to do that with anything that's a dynamic secret. And this also helps meet compliances, right? So if you have a 30-day objective on one of your policies, then we can help meet that. Creates a moving target for attackers, right? If they found a secret in code, a token in code, right? As Bob said, a lot of people are hard coding. Well, with dynamic secrets, that secret's already invalid, right? It validated itself after 30 seconds after your process ended. It really minimizes the risk of exposing credentials. And like I said, the rotation and revocation are part of the process. No longer are you reliant on kind of this hard coding within your code itself. You're basically pointing to Vault, right? And saying, I'm going to prove my identity to you. Once that's done, this is kind of built into my process for the application. So it's just a better way to develop apps in general. Next slide. Just so everyone knows, these are the types of dynamic secrets engines that exist today. We're constantly adding them as we need more integrations, but we have basic cloud credentials, right? AWS, Azure, GCP. We have API credentials, right? So third-party SaaS. We do have PKI capabilities, and then big ones, databases, right? We support over a dozen different databases with dynamic secrets. And then we also, the identity management's Active Directory, LDAP, etc. These are all dynamic, so we can issue dynamic credentials or tokens with these integrations. Let's go ahead and do the last slide. And then the other point, so Bob kind of touched on it, was there's this need to do identity observability. So that's where we introduced Vault Radar this year. We created it. So this is the other half. This is how we go discover these unmanaged secrets out there in your environments, right? Your hard-coded stuff in the password manager, your hard-coded stuff in your repos. We decided we needed a tool to help discover these things, and what we're going to do is automatically pull these into Vault, so they are managed and can be dynamic. So we're constantly adding here what we can scan against. I think we announced a few more here at HashiCorp last month. Really the idea is we find these sources, they can be in your pipelines, they can be in your repos, we bring them in the Vault, and we help manage them going forward. I think that's it for me. Until next slide.
Great. All right.
There we go. So, so guys, you see why, Hashi is the class act of the non-human identity world, because it is the standard, right, that people use bluntly. Now, here's where you start to see the synergies between IBM and HashiCorp that weren't out there before. So, as he shared with you, remember the concept of observabilities, find the hard-coded secrets, and that's what Vault Radar does, right? On top of that, how do you find, from an observability point of view, all the different, how many instances of Vault Community and Enterprise Edition are out there? How many alternate key managers and cert managers are out there? Where are all the shadow identities? That's a technology that we at IBM have brought through our solution, as I mentioned, called VIP, or Verify Identity Protection. What it does is it addresses those two cool kid acronyms that everybody's been using for 2 years of ISPM, Identity Security Posture Management, and ITDR, Identity Threat Detection Response. And so what ISPM means is posture management is, where do I have sloppy identity posture that can lead to problems later on, either an attack or an attack being more effective because of sloppy identity posture, which allows people to get places they shouldn't be able to get to. So that's like more of a discovering a vulnerability point of view, which IT cares about a lot. And then the ITDR side of it is find the actual problems as they're occurring. And that's, think about the acronym, Identity Threat Detection Response. What does a SOC do? It does TDR. It does Threat Detection and Response. ITDR for identities is literally because of the fact that what a SOC generally does to detect identity attacks is not good. And we know this because we've been in threat management forever. And what everybody does for trying to find identity threats in the SOC is that they will turn on like a user behavior analytics module in their SIM tool and look at this glut of information looking for patterns, right? And there's a lot of people looking at entitlements and all that kind of stuff, which is good, but it doesn't actually find the attacks. So how do you find the attacks? Well, ITDR is how do you move the threat detection and response for identities closer to the IDPs themselves? And that's what this is really about. So what we do inside of Verify Identity Protection is we discover the poor posture, such as multiple unmanaged non-human identity systems and shadow directories and assets and access and stuff. And then we also provide the ability to watch what's happening on the wire and find the identity threats as they're literally happening. So let's go to the next slide. The way that we do this, and once you see this, it kind of makes it obvious, is what this is an AI engine. It's 4.5, 5 years now of learning what healthy and non-healthy identity activity looks like. And what it does is it pulls in 3 sources. It pulls in all your network flows, your cloud flows, and all your identity activity. So it hooks to your IDPs, it hooks to the network, it hooks to whatever multi-cloud you're using. It looks at what's happening and just observes by processing it through this AI engine, doing graph analysis. And so it finds, for example, when you've got 15 Vault Community Editions and 3 other key managers being used. It finds, for example, when a user authenticates to a directory, which you've actually was not on the list that you said were your directories, so you found a shadow directory, and then accessed this critical application, and there was no engagement against the MFA engine. This is how you find it, because all we're doing is looking at what's actually happening on the wire and relating it intelligently to all the identity activity. So that's how we're able to do this. So IBM, a lot of people don't realize this, but we have a venture capital fund, and we've poured millions of dollars into this startup called Authmind, and that is where we've gotten this technology for what we call VIP, Verified Identity Protection. So it can find all this stuff, and once again, when you get an AI engine that's at its 4 to 5 year mark of processing stuff constantly around these type of activities, it is amazing how fast and immediate it finds stuff. Let's go to the next slide. So the way this thing works is it's first of all got an incredible dashboard that brings the top level stuff up to you. There's over 70 what we call detection logics in it. We actually have a white paper. I'd be happy to send it to anyone that wants it. The document's actually 140 use cases between ISPM and ITDR, things that we find today, and it works with any IDP. It works with our IBM Verify IDP. It works with Octoping and everybody else. It works with HashiCorp. And so it's already got that visibility able to tie across the way. So let's go to the next slide. The kind of method behind the madness is that out of the 140 things out of the box that we can find today, this slide shows you what are the ones that come up the most, and not surprising, it's the ones I've already been touching on. So shadow assets, exposed assets, under blind spots, right? That's a posture problem. And it's so interesting to me that it's so interesting. So when I talk to like the SOC teams, they're not very interested in this identity blind spots thing, because SOC teams are trained to respond to active threats. So when you say, here's something that could lead to a threat, the SOC teams are like, I don't know if I really care about that. Whereas the IT teams are like, I need to know that because I can get it cleaned up before it causes a problem. So there's a weird dynamic between the kind of, let's say, call it cyber ops side and IT on this stuff. And VIP really brings that out in these conversations. The blind spots are of interest to IT. The infrastructure issues are of interest to IT. But also the SOC because of things like the MFA bypasses. And then the risky identity activity, right? Because it's not just MFA, it's also like ZTNA bypass. So finding all that stuff, these are the things that people are getting the immediate value on. And I can tell you, when we bring this tool into your environment and set it up, let it run a couple of hours, oh boy, you're going to be surprised. I can tell you that. And this is not false positive world. This is the, did you realize this is happening? And you go, oh, so that's what this observability or visibility brings. So let's go to the next slide. We often get questions about, what's the secret sauce? The secret sauce is tying into the IDPs as well as the cloud and net flows, and then the deep learning engine that we have. And like I said, we do graphical analysis. So what's wild about it is when it finds something and flags it for you, you can click down on it and you can see all the way back to the original thing that happened on the wire that led it to start paying attention to that trend. And you can see how it happened. You can recreate how it happened, either the poor posture or the identity threat itself. And it just gives you incredible observability. Now here, I haven't said this yet, but here's the real magic of it. This observability is so obvious that it allows the DevOps, IT, and security teams all to see the same thing. So it allows you to see both the human and non-human identities in action in a consistent way and where the problems are. And that's the observability. It just hasn't been out there before. And that's kind of the super secret magic that we have in this thing. So let's go to the next slide. Because we often, when we're looking at this, we'll go, okay, all right, I'm interested, but how do I hook it in? The flexibility here is amazing. So what some people will do, they'll say, oh, I don't know if I want to put something pulling all the network and cloud flows. I've already done that, and I'm already sending the network and cloud flows that I care about to my SIM tool, for example. So in that case, we just hook to the SIM, and pull it from the SIM if you've already done pre-processing. Sometimes we'll have a client say, well, we need to hook into this particular networking gear because this is the segment of the network we care about the most. You just hook in there, right? And with the IDPs, it already supports these IDPs, so it just pulls the stuff in. So it's very flexible on how it deploys, and you can kind of do it in a segmented way to make sure you're focused on the information that you care about the most. So let's go to the next slide. So a good example of why this observability of human and non-human is, of course, the Change Healthcare breach was huge. And there's been a lot of studies done that have nailed what are the litany of things that happened that allowed that to happen. And we're going to share this with you. So give it time. I'm not going to go into great detail on this. But if you look at the 4 phases of issues that cropped up in the Change Healthcare breach, literally, if you had this kind of observability, it could have seen each one of those 4 escalations as they occurred. That's what watching the wire and doing intelligent analysis of what's happening on the wire relative to identity changes actually does for you. All right, let's go to the next slide because we're going to turn it over to Jim here in a minute. So that's what this thing is. It gives you observability across Hashi, across other non-human identity systems, across all the human identity systems. As I said, 140 different use cases of things that don't look natural. I gave you an example earlier of 27 human identities suddenly swamping a non-human machine identity, and 17 of them were dormant for 18 months. We literally find that in real time for you. So next slide, please. So one of the things we offer all of our clients is the ability to come in and do a free posture assessment. What we'll do is bring the tool in, set it up in your environment, and show you the kind of stuff it's finding in your environment. And it kind of makes the case. So that is there. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so, this is one of the major things. IBM has been investing. I mean, obviously, I've been doing it for 31 years. So we've been investing in cyber, if you want to be technical, since Racket in the 1960s, right on the mainframe. But for distributed security, we started acquiring companies in September 1999. Our Verify access solution for access management is literally acquisition number 1 back in 1999. And since then, we've acquired 33 cyber-related companies in our time. And so what we focus on is what IBM's really good at, hybrid cloud and AI. So as I shared with you in the story of identity management, the way we've done our identity fabric is in a way that's hybrid and AI based. So if you have Octaping, ForgeRock, Supple, Entra, the stuff I've shared with you works with them too. VIP works with those. HashiCorp clearly has for years worked with all of those. So our identity fabric doesn't say you have to use my IDP to get this value. We do that already. And that's what we're here. The observability is the big difference, is that it allows everybody to have the same calling card of what's actually happening out there. So you can actually have intelligent discussions in that monthly meeting between DevOps and IT versus saying, well, we probably ought to think about doing this at some point. Let's go to the next slide. And yeah, the one more, please. So once again, we've been doing this a long time. We'd love to work with you on this stuff. And I think I've already said that. So let's go to the next slide. Adam.
Yes. So HashiCorp, our key is to kind of adopting Vault for our security products. We do what we call security lifecycle management. It's not just an overnight thing, right? It spans multiple personas. And really the idea is we start integrating your day-to-day security processes into the tool itself, right? So this might be me with your security team and seeing where we can integrate Vault or Boundary, right, for access. Same thing with your platform team and your DevOps teams, right? Let's start integrating some of those best practices and consuming the tools, the secret agents in a programmatic way. And what we always say is kind of our partners, we're kind of one of the best resources to do that, right? intiGrow kind of has SMEs. They know the IBM product, our product. They kind of help meet with you and see what your goals are. They kind of go right, how do we do this, right? This isn't say this is going to happen overnight. This is going to happen 30 days. It's going to be a long-term thing, and it's the staged approach. We found that a roadmap like this is kind of typical of what our customers do when trying to fully adopt our products. You can go to the next slide.
Okay. I guess it's my turn. All right. So as everybody can see, it's kind of a mouthful, and I'll kind of add some of this for everybody. Obviously intiGrow is an IBM, kind of gold partner. We work on, large and medium-sized scale project strategy and integration for IBM and Hashi customers all over the US and kind of around the world. So a couple of things to touch on, and this is not such an important slide to drill into, but I did want to mention earlier this year, out in the wild, a researcher found what has come to be known as the mother of all breaches. If you're not familiar with this repository of, I think, about 6 terabytes contained about 26 billion logins, along with the associated password for virtually every email provider that any of us here use. And that also includes all the meta assets, that includes commercial applications, among various other items. So from a practical perspective, dynamic secrets, creation and management, among other areas, have become never more important. And I can tell you that 28% in the last 60 days of phishing attacks have really uprisen about 28% in the last 60 days due to this. And we see it continuously occurring. So we'll go into really quickly on the next slide a couple of things that we do to help mitigate that. They are kind of no-cost events. And, these are what we call our complimentary maturity assessments. They are unpaid. We basically work also with federal government entities and even InfraGard and others to help clients to kind of get a jumping off point for strategically where they need to get to based on where their policy is lacking. So as Bob mentioned previously, IBM and intiGrow can help you do a posture assessment. We were talking about VIP and the observability of your identity assets, which is incredibly cool because you can see literally the identity voyage along the IDP and everything it's looking or attempting to do. We haven't really seen this before anywhere, so it's a vastly different approach to bolster your policy. As Bob mentioned, or also, this will give us the opportunity to identify policy violations, find, where hard-coded secrets are, and, enable you to kind of provide, feedback on where you're falling short. And obviously, whether you automate it with an L2 ticket or however you do what you do, go back and fix the things that are creating great exposure for your organization today. So again, as part of that, we also talked about the ITDR part of VIP. That's the threat detect and respond part. As Bob was mentioning, it's great to pass this information back to red teams if they're willing to listen, right? But pretty much everybody else wants to know where the potential threat factors are to their applications. And there's very little reason not to think about why that makes sense, I think, for folks out there. Okay, so far we've talked about HashiCorp Vault a little bit. We've talked about VIP a little bit, which is, again, ITDR and ISPM, so threat detect and policy management or posture management. Also, another thing that we do is identity compliance health check and remediation. If you are an organization or are part of that have to do a number of different things like attestation, right? We send email out or contact to every user in the periodically to meet, Gramm-Leach-Bliley, Sarbanes-Oxley, HIPAA, FERC, all kinds of regulations. And that we do standardly, easily with a Verify governance component. And Verify governance manages total identity workflow for, I think it's really tens of thousands of folks around the globe. So that's often their standard authoritative source where they manage Active Directory, they manage RACF, they manage Linux, Unix assets, and then through OpenID Connect, we manage cloud assets as well, and their authentication, provisioning, deprovisioning. So if that makes sense so far, I'll keep moving on. Zero trust maturity is something people have been talking about for a decade, and yet very few people even have a concept of how to get to least privilege at this point. It's kind of like two-factor authentication, right? Here in the middle of 2025, that's going to be a thing of the past. Nobody's going to have to worry about it because we'll all have one common set of roles in the enterprise, which is true nowhere, right? So we help people to sit down, analyze their topology, and gain an understanding of what is not matching to create a least privilege scenario, to have for an identity, to have the lowest possible common denominator of roles that it can have so that those roles do not sprawl over the course of time. If you've been in a company for a dozen years, you could potentially have had 3 jobs, 3 sets of roles based on applications you need access to, and then obviously have access to all your old stuff too. We see it all the time. That is not how zero trust works, right? That needs to pivot with every change that occurs in the directory or the LDAP. So we help people plan this, even if it's a complex global scenario, and they don't really know what their topology looks like. We kind of help them to get there, and that's part of this maturity assessment. Overall security posture and policy, people sometimes endeavor that involves all aspects of security, from the endpoint, the threat intelligence we're pulling off, sending it to SIM or SOAR assets, to IoT, to identity, to data resilience and protection, and virtually all aspects of security. I will also mention we do attack surface reviews for folks as well. If you are pen testing your environment, probably know a lot about OWASP and that whole thing. But the other thing I was going to mention, and I think everybody kind of went toward this a little bit, we now do AI corporate policy assessment. And we do it at a level that helps people to understand exactly what they're getting into. Most folks don't have one AI engine, and there's a lot of battle in the market, with great tools like watsonx and watsonx governance to govern AI for an enterprise. But what we find is that AI needs to be governed also, right? If we're provisioning users in or out of AI, we need to understand exactly what they're doing. And we need to understand which ones belong and don't based on their role. Also, if we are looking at a customer in terms of how they're training their large language model, whether people are logging in to their development environments to write applications, but they have an AI assistant that's not governed on their laptop or their other machine, that's a very large policy violation and a huge risk to the enterprise. If somebody leaves, they still have their bots running. It's extremely difficult. And we need log events to drive compliance. So those normalized log events will go to a SIM or other area for that to basically normalize, aggregate that data, and provide the compliance report back to the auditor. So these are areas that AI needs to also participate in. And we do that through creating group policy where those AIs are associated with human identities, as we were talking about at the outset. So the other issue that we do is business value assessments. We help people reduce their software stack if they have shelfware. So, or to realize how to optimize the tools that they're using, really for financial optimization. A lot of folks today have tools they're not necessarily using, or they used to use. They're still paying maintenance on them. And then other tools that they're going to use maybe one day, but they might even have two competitive ones. So in this time of cost remediation, it's kind of a big deal to look at BVAs too. So we're very grateful for everybody's time today. Again, thank you, gentlemen, for kind of joining and providing real detail analysis on IBM strategy, and also on the HashiCorp, total view of the world. And with that, Courtney, I guess I would open things to questions if anybody has one. I think we're all happy to answer.
I don't know if there's been something that any questions that have kind of come through. Check. I don't see anything, but just sort of some thoughts that I have, especially since we've been in the field having a lot of conversations. I mean, what I've heard is, we currently use Vault for secrets management. What does the enterprise edition do that the community edition doesn't? And Adam, I'll hand that question over to you.
Sure thing. So number one is support. We don't support our community products. So if you're in an industry that requires compliance, supported products, right, governments or big banks, right, you guys have to go through our enterprise product to get that kind of service. I will say we've had a few customers that were paying for support, right? They say, hey, I'm taking multi-million-dollar outage, come begging for help, and we help them, obviously, knowing that we'll get something on the back end. But it's like, if you're running a multi-million-dollar process, then you probably should be on our enterprise products, right? It's really a risky position at that point. But feature-wise, you don't get full business continuity with our community products. It's not true HA. You do take some downtime in the event of failure to your main node, whereas the enterprise product is truly BC compliant, right? You won't know an outage of a single node because it spans regions seamlessly. You get the performance replications with the paid products. You get more policies, right? So you get access to our Sentinel policies, you get access to namespaces. That's not in the community edition. And then really some of our newer capabilities really put in the paid product. So some of the new secrets manager capabilities around Spiffy, some of our new stuff around certs, that's only going into the paid products. And let's see, lastly, I'd say any of it, we call it the advanced data protection suites, or the HSM, KMIP, format preserving encryption, data masking. That's only available in the paid product. So there's lots of features, and really, I think we have a sheet out there on our main pricing sheet that kind of highlights it. But definitely, there's advantages to being on paid Vault or enterprise Vault.
Awesome, thanks, Adam. And just one more quick thing, Jim or Bob, I think this question could be answered by you. What does IBM Identity provide that the competition doesn't provide?
Across the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, clearly the observability layer that does both ISPM and ITDR with an engine that's been around 4.5, 5 years is very, very unique. And you're going to see increasing integrations come with HashiCorp, especially Vault, for obvious reasons. That is something that we can do at scale because we're all part of one development team now.
Yeah, it's funny. So full disclosure, we do touch other tools out in the market. Maybe to some degree we've seen, I'm going to be really honest, right, with my partners here. Some things in Microsoft between Azure and on-prem AD where there's a degree of identity visibility in their realm alone, but nothing like VIP has. I think anybody that were to do, as we talked about, a posture kind of assessment would be shocked at the level of workflow that you can watch an identity doing. And you can almost enforce policy on the fly, or it certainly spurs you into thinking where you're really short, as Bob mentioned earlier. So, yeah, it's incredibly unique there. Nobody else has something like this. I can say that. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you, team, for all of your insights and sharing. This session has been recorded, so if you weren't able to be here with us or you missed any part of it, we will get the recording to you. And we love doing this series, so if you're interested in being on this journey with us, we're happy to help you in any way we can, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar session. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great one.
Thanks.
Thanks.